All right, joining me in the studio right now is the former Indian diplomat Arun Singh. He was the former ambassador to Israel, among many other assignments. Also with us is Nishita Virendra, WION's correspondent, who's joining us from Muscat itself. Thank you both for being here. Ambassador, I'll come to you first. Before the Prime Minister starts speaking, if I can ask you, what do you think the big expectations are for both India and Oman from the Prime Minister's visit to the Sultanate?
So Oman has always been among our closest partners in the Gulf. You'd have seen that starting with Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi, every Indian Prime Minister Narasimha Rao, Vajpayee, Manmohan Singh and now Prime Minister Modi has visited Oman. It's a historical relationship. The rulers of Oman have maintained strong links with India. And there is a strong diaspora-based partnership. So today, almost 800,000 people, and you mentioned to a figure of almost 20% of Oman's population, are people of Indian origin.
Right.
And I had visited Muscat several years ago, and the sense I got was that they felt very welcome in Oman. And they felt that they were an integrated part of society, and they were contributing to society there. Our trade with Oman is not quite the same level as the trade with UAE. Trade with Saudi Arabia.
Sure.
It's about $4 billion because Oman is not an energy-rich country. But we get a lot of fertilizers from Oman. But Oman is critical because it is just on the other side of the Indian Ocean.
Yes.
And from the geopolitical security perspective, it's an important country.
Absolutely.
And if you looked at how our officials have described this visit of the Prime Minister, not just to the Oman but to the entire region, they have described it as a visit to an extended maritime neighborhood. To UAE, and they're talking in that sense also of Jordan and beyond.
And the signal, of course, it seems, is to China's hegemonic rise in the Indian Ocean region. Do you feel that that's important to look at?
I would not only link it to that. I would say that it is an assertion that the security of the Indian Ocean is getting more and more important for us.
All right.
For a long time, foreign trade was not a very important part of India's GDP, and our economy was more focused on domestic demand. But today, more than 50% of our GDP is generated by the external sector. And if you exports and imports, and if you add financial flows, it is more than 50%. And a large part of this trade flow takes place through the Indian Ocean. And again, almost 60% of our energy requirements come from the Gulf.
Right.
There is a diaspora presence in the Gulf of more than 8 million people, repatriating more than $30 billion, $35 billion annually to India. So if there is instability in the Gulf, and if you are concerned about the welfare of the Indian origin population, if there are 8 million people there, they are perhaps taking care of 40 million people or more back home. So it's an area of great concern for India. Because of this enhanced linkage, and as the Indian economy grows, then the trade and energy links with this region will grow even more.
Right.
So I think based on that, I am now finding that gradually our defense cooperation partnerships with the countries in the region has been increasing. With Oman, it has traditionally been there.
Right.
We have done regular military exercises of all branches, Army, Navy, Air Force, with Oman for quite some time. We also train the Omani defense personnel. And so that has been an ongoing dimension, and I'm sure that will get a further boost with the visit of the Prime Minister. Now with UAE, so far we were doing some training of personnel, some capacity building.
Right.
But during the Prime Minister's visit, it has been indicated that in March, we will now do a naval exercise with the UAE.
So an enhancement even in that relationship.
Even in that relationship.
Right.
And there has been repeated talk during the visit of UAE now partnering with India in defense production.
Sure.
And perhaps looking at investment in defense production in India. So you can see that that dimension of the relationship is also gradually increasing.
Right.
So it will have to increase step by step depending on our capacities and also depending on the interests of the countries there, because they also need to welcome. The fact that they are a host to more than almost 9 million people of Indian origin is a reflection of the fact that they are very comfortable with the presence of the Indian origin diaspora in their countries and comfortable with the growing relationship with India.
And that was a sentiment that came up repeatedly even in Dubai, in Abu Dhabi, where the Crown Prince said, while referring to the Indian community as trustworthy again and again. And that is something that Nishita also picked up on. Nishita, if I can ask you this question, even while speaking with the community in Oman, the Indian community in Oman, did you feel that that the relationship is warm, not just because of the historical ties between the two countries, but also the sort of respect and that is accorded to the Indian community in the Sultanate, and the freedom perhaps they have of practicing their customs, their religion, given that there's a temple that dates back to centuries that Prime Minister Modi is going to be visiting tomorrow.
Absolutely. In fact, many of I've been speaking to the Indians here at the Sultan Qaboos Stadium, and one of them is holding up a poster saying, "India is my Ma Devki, but Oman is my Jashoda Ma, and while Oman is in my heart, India is in my every breath." So they hold Oman very, very close to their heart. They have lived through this strengthening of relations between Oman and India, and that is something that has not happened over a few years. So while on one hand you have the relationship with countries like UAE and India that have been strengthened in a fast-paced manner over the last 3-4 years, between Oman and India it has been largely gradual, and there is a lot of appreciation for the Indian diaspora here as well. As we were discussing earlier, Aisha, the fact that the Sultan has studied in India, his father has also studied in India. There's a tradition of the royal family coming down to India for education, at least for a short period of time, goes on to show the comfort with which the two nations interact. And there is another family called Khimji Ramdas. He is no more, but he was the first Hindu who was given the status of a sheikh.
Right.
And his entire family now dress as locals. They speak the local language, and they are also given Omani citizenship status. So Oman has embraced Indians over several centuries now, and Indians, while they miss their motherland, they feel Oman is very, very close to their heart, and they'll probably not leave it.
Absolutely. That's a sentiment I gauge from all the conversations you've been having with everyone who's gathered there in Oman. Ambassador Singh, also, if we are to look at the larger region and current issues thereof, you know, the standoff between Saudi Arabia, for instance, and Iran, the fact that Syria has been battling a civil war for so many years, Yemen, Oman's immediate neighbor, is going through a crisis of, unbelievable humanitarian scale. Do you think that makes Oman stand out even more, given the stability in the country, and that is an especially important factor for a country like India?
Absolutely, and I think Oman stands out because of that. And another sort of distinguishing feature of Oman has been that although it is a Gulf country,
right,
a member of the GCC, it has maintained some independence in its foreign policy choices. For example, in the context of Yemen, it has not supported what Saudi Arabia has been doing. And despite being a neighbor of Saudi Arabia, it has also maintained good relations with Iran.
Right.
And for instance, when the US started exploring the possibility of a nuclear agreement with Iran, the first secret meeting between US representatives and Iranian representatives had been held in Oman.
Yes.
And that had been enabled because Oman had links. Oman is also part of the Ashgabat process, which links Oman, Iran, Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan as a connectivity link,
right,
something that would be of interest to India. And India has also now joined that. So Oman, because of the stability, because of its independent assertion of foreign policy, to good relations maintains with other countries, certainly provides an opportunity, an enhanced opportunity.
Do you see a parallel in some ways then to Oman's foreign policy initiatives and India's? Because just yesterday when you and I were speaking and I brought up non-aligned, you talked about this idea of India exploring multiple poles and not looking at just, binaries when it comes to foreign policy. Oman in some ways is reflective of the same strategy perhaps in West Asia.
I think so, although Oman's position and India's position are somewhat different. Oman is located in the Gulf, we are immediately located in South Asia, but the two of us are connected by the Indian Ocean. And I think you're right that each one gives importance to maintaining independence in its foreign policy decision making. And I think another thought that struck me as you're describing how the event will take place at the sports complex is that each country in the region also sees a particularly unique role for India.
Right.
We have our limitations and we have our own challenges domestically. Yet, because of the way India has conducted its foreign policy historically, maintained its relationship with every country based on our own decision making. So you saw when, for example, he visited Palestine, he was able to go to Palestine without going to Israel.
Absolutely, yes.
And I think that was an acceptance by Israel of a certain comfort in the relationship. When he went to Jordan, certain special gestures were accorded by the King of Jordan by the manner in which he received the Prime Minister, gave him his own personal helicopter to go to Oman. Similarly, the manner in which he was received in UAE and how he's being treated in Oman. So the countries in this region are also today looking at different options because for a long time they were very much a part of the Western alliance system.
Sure.
And in that context they look at Soviet Union with a lot of concern because they felt that the Soviet Union was a challenge to their societies, their economic model. And they also saw that India had difficult relations with the US, was perhaps closer to the Soviet Union. So they looked at in that context. With the dissolution of the Soviet Union, things started changing.
Right. It's changed India's position as well vis-a-vis all of these countries.
That's right. And these countries look at India differently. But even further, today, with the US stepping back from its traditional role, each of these countries are now looking for additional options.
Sure.
And in that framework, and with the special, unique role they see for India, I think with our limitation, but still, India is in a position to build on its relationship with all these countries, and they are comfortable in enhancing their relationship with India because they don't see engagement with India or an enhanced presence of the Indian origin diaspora as a threat to their own models and their own stability.
Absolutely. Nishchita, do you agree in some ways from what you've also gauged while tracking the Prime Minister that in addition to the Indian community, which of course is excited about the idea of Prime Minister Modi visiting the countries where they're residing, but also the kind of welcome that he's been accorded at each of these stops in starting with Jordan and ending now in Oman. The fact that at the stadium itself he's going to be speaking from a box that is usually reserved only for the Sultan Qaboos himself. So do you feel that these countries have gone perhaps a step further than is usual in welcoming Prime Minister Modi this time?
Absolutely, and recognizing that with the Prime Minister, India too is a force that they need to, that deserves of the stage. So the Prime Minister, as you said, will be the first leader who will be allowed to sit on the seat at the Sultan Qaboos Stadium that is otherwise reserved only for the Sultan. And just recapping what happened yesterday, the entire royal family, a good number of members from the royal family were at the airport in Abu Dhabi to receive the Prime Minister, something that is completely deviating from protocol. You also had the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi accompany the Prime Minister in the same vehicle as they went to the presidential palace to get that extra bit of time to interact with him face to face. So all these acts go on to show that that they're reciprocating what India is doing. The Prime Minister has broken protocol multiple times to receive these leaders in India, and when he goes to these countries now it is being reciprocated, and they understand that they too see a very strong and close ally in India.
Absolutely. I'll ask you to stay on with me, Nishchita and Ambassador Singh. We have to take a quick break on the broadcast right now. We are, of course, waiting for the Prime Minister to begin his address to the Indian diaspora in Muscat. For now, though, a quick break. We'll see you on the other side.